Today I want to talk about procrastination and how that can impact your business and therefore other parts of your life as well. Ultimately, procrastination is more than just poor time management. There are some underlying emotional reasons that pop in as to why we procrastinate on a certain thing that we're doing, which we're going to explore today. So it's more about avoidance than time management. We're actually avoiding doing something for whatever physical or emotional reason that might bring up. So let's have a look at some of them now. The first one is overwhelm. Sometimes a task feels so big that we get overwhelmed with what we need to do. So we want to avoid that feeling of disappointment, of not being good enough, because we know ultimately we can't achieve such a big task in what we want to do. So we procrastinate on it and we push it away. We start to overthink the outcome. Is it going to be good enough? Is it going to be received well? Why am I doing it? What purpose does it serve? Is it really what I need to do right now? What am I supposed to be doing? So that overwhelm creeps in and we push it aside because we want to avoid those emotions that come behind the lack of not being able to complete that task, which is that feeling of disappointment of not being good enough. Another part is the perfectionist comes out in us. Now that sounds great, but it's more of an excuse. You see, we use that excuse it needs to be perfect as a reason to kind of avoid finishing it. But ultimately we need to understand that anything we do in business is not going to be perfect. We need to make sure that what we do is going to be able to be adapted and change whenever it needs to be. So finding that perfection is unachievable. So you, again, setting yourself up for that overwhelm because you really want it to be perfect, even though you know deep down it's not going to get there. So you're setting yourself up for that disappointment. So we avoid it, we procrastinate on it, and we jump to something else, which leads us to the next one, which is self-distraction. We start to distract ourselves with the more shinier object. And this often happens when we've got too many to-do things on our list of wants or desires. For example, you might want to write a book, open a new business, start a new segment of the company, hire some new people, whatever it might be. And you create such this big list of do's and wants that the overwhelm again kicks in. We're trying to achieve that perfectionist outcome, which we're not going to get. So we distract ourselves by jumping to the next task. We can't beat this one, so I'm going to go and start working on this one. That one then becomes too big and we jump to something else. So we can see that even though there's three different types of it, they're all intertwined, interlinked into the emotions and that feelings around avoidance. We're avoiding pain. We're avoiding disappointment. We're punishing ourselves sometimes for things that we don't really need to. So what can we do to kind of tame this beast? Now, we're not, I guess, necessarily going to get rid of procrastination all the time because it will creep in as we go along, but what systems can we put into place to kind of tame it and create some control around it? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to create some structure around the task that we're doing, and that structure means breaking it down into small, measurable, and achievable goals. Now, we're starting at step 1 and we're looking at step 20. That's when the overwhelm kicks in because we're looking at step 20. We're missing 1, 2, 3, 4, and all the way up. So we want to create some structure around the task by breaking it up into those 20 steps that we need to do. Then what you would like to do, what we need to do, is we need to actually book out certain periods of time in our day to achieve those tasks. And I mean literally in your diary. Treat it as if it's like this really critical business meeting that you just cannot miss. You book it in, you shut everything out, and you just focus on that task. Now, it doesn't have to be 2-3 hours. It might be 20 minutes. But be specific about booking it in and what that task will be within that time period, and then sit down and do it. And when you have done it, congratulate yourself. Be proud that you've done that. Don't berate yourself because there's still 19 steps to go and you're not going to get there. Focus on what you've achieved and be proud of that and congratulate yourself for it. Change your environment. What I mean by that is if you need to do something creative with work and your creativity comes when you're sitting outside in the sun, then put yourself in that environment to achieve that outcome. Don't sit in a dark, dingy office if that's not where you're creative. Or if you need to be in an office environment, then put yourself in that type of environment, set it up however you can. So the environment that we work in also helps us to deal with the overwhelm and that self-distraction, because we're in a place where we're happy and content with what we need to do to create. Last thing I want to say is delegate. Don't get distracted with the crap you don't like to do. Delegate it to somebody. For example, if you've got to spend 3 or 4 hours at the end of every week doing book work and you ultimately hate book work, then don't do it. It doesn't make sense. There's people out there that love doing book work. Go and find them and pay them. It might only take them 1 hour to do what you're dragging your feet for 4 hours, feeling that overwhelm, that distraction. Imagine what you can do with 4 extra hours of your week. Time with your family, time with yourself, time working on strategies to grow the business. So look at identify when that procrastination kicks in, put some structure into place, delegate the crap that you don't like to do. Now, share whatever kind of tips and tricks you use to get yourself out of that procrastination kind of loop, which might help somebody else. If you're looking at ways to set up and create that structure, reach out through the number below or hit the link, book in a call. Let's put some structure in place. Let's reduce that overwhelm. Let's get rid of those distractions and get you back on building your business.